Hello and welcome to Traditional Painting the Digital Way. This is where I use digital painting apps to teach traditional painting techniques. This is part 5 and the last part in my Pillar of Fire series. And in this video we're going to go ahead and add the final details to the cloud and try to get the final colors and the contrast that we want to show. The app that we're using is Infinite Painter for Android. And if you're following along traditionally, check out part 1 in this series where I have a list of all the paint and the colors, the brushes, and the canvases that I use. So here we're going to go ahead and try to blend out a little bit of some of the edges inside, but we don't want to get rid of most of the edges. We're at a point now where we've got the soft edges and we've got the colors that we want, and we're just trying to refine all that right now and just kind of bring out the three-dimensional look to the clouds. And here I was working a little bit on the hills at the bottom. I didn't like exactly how they looked, so I was just kind of adding a little bit of some shadows to the mountains underneath, and I just wanted to blend that in just a little bit. You can have any kind of silhouette that you want. At the bottom it's effective, just up against the clouds. I just wanted to kind of give it a just give it a mountainous look. You can have the tree line, and I don't know, the tree line might have been better. I'm not sure. It just depends on what you want there. And I was trying to kind of give the look of some canyons, not make it completely dark, but make it kind of like it had a little bit of some depth to it on the canyons of these mountains here, these mesas, trying to make them look kind of like mesas, which are flat-topped type of mountains, and show a gap there like a valley between the two mountains, the mesas there, and just trying to kind of refine that a little bit and make it look a little bit better. And then I wanted to work a little bit more on the light of the clouds. I need to bring out some of the pockets of light again. And again, the pockets of light are where the lightning is striking in these clouds. We're trying to make this a big giant thunderhead that has lightning in it, and the lightning just lights up the inner billows of the clouds. And so I'm trying to show that and make sure that you see that contrast. So I'm working a little bit more on that, adding a really light blue color there and trying to add some of the middle tones of the billows and the billowy look that the clouds have inside there, and just trying to give that internal glow, because that's the biggest thing that sells this as clouds lit up by the lightning, is the internal glow. It's not just on the edges. The lightning is in the clouds, and it lights them up like a lamp almost in the inside there. So you want to try to make sure that you capture that glow that you see in these big thunderhead clouds at night. And so I'm using really light yellow. Again, it's not pure white when you see these clouds at night, and it may be because of the atmosphere, but you can see colors. They're light yellows. Sometimes they're peach colored. Sometimes they're light pink and light blue, but they always give a really um, big flash when the lightning hits. But it does have different colors, and that just kind of sells the idea that these clouds are lit up by lightning inside. And then here I wanted to add some stars, and you can use the one of the spray brushes in Infinite Painter and add a few stars behind the clouds. And if you're following along traditionally, get you a mixture of yellow and white acrylic gesso and make it really soupy, and take an old paintbrush and flick it on the canvas, and that makes some of the best stars, because they're random and you're not just dotting them on by hand or something, because you tend to fall into a pattern when you do it by hand. So you want to just flick it on with the paintbrush and make it have a random pattern. And so I'm working a little bit more on the mountain edge. Just wanted to fix that shape a little bit and sort of fix the stars, make sure that they're behind the clouds. Or sometimes if the clouds are really thin, you can see the stars um, peeping through at night too. So you might want to do one or two of those, and just kind of, you can go back and work on some of the random dots that splattered on your canvas to maybe brighten some stars if you want to uh, accentuate some of the stars in the sky, or if you wanted to do a constellation or something. So here I decided that I would sign it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm through. It just means that I'm getting pretty close, and then of course I always have to do something else. So I was doing a little more tweaking on the mountains a little bit, and just working on the shape, and trying to add a little bit of some depth to the mountains, just tweaking a little bit of that, and working on the shape. I also wanted to darken the bottom of the clouds a little bit more um, there, so that you could get a sense of the depth of the clouds at the bottom. So I was using the cloudy spray brush, an Infinite Painter, and you can also use a glaze if you're doing this traditionally. Just get some of your darker paint mixture, make it really thin with water, and glaze over your dried layers of paint. It'll only work if you have dried layers. Otherwise, it will just smear. So you have to make sure the bottom layers are dry before you do this glazing technique. And it also works pretty well with watercolor. In fact, it's, I think, mostly a watercolor technique, but you can use it with acrylic as well. And I just wanted to go ahead and do a little more tweaking on the clouds, try to get the um, edges a little more defined right there at the top of the clouds. And here, if you're following along traditionally, you'd use your round number 3 brush. You want thinner lines here, and you're still going to sort of smudge them in, but you want them to be just on the edge. We're trying to now just kind of do the edges of the billows in the clouds, and just do the final refining look to the clouds. So you don't want to mess with all the different colors and layers that you've already put on so far. You just want a little bit darker color along the edges of your clouds. So that's what I'm doing, and I'm not trying to cover up all the layers that are already put on this painting. And so I'm just looking around and trying to find the dark pockets there, and some of the um, lighter ones to contrast against the light background. Um, the middle tones. I'm trying to get the middle tones to contrast a little bit against the uh, light backgrounds, because the middle tones are important too. The middle tones sort of bring more depth and more dimensionality, say that 3 times fast, to your painting and to your cloud. So I'm working on that a little bit and just kind of um, working on the edges of some of those darker pockets right there on the bottom. And here I'm putting a little bit more of some of the lighter color on the edges of the clouds, just trying to make the shape a little bit better and more like the photo reference. You don't have to follow it exactly. You just want to make sure that the shapes are plausible and they're not some kind of crazy look that wouldn't occur in nature. And here I'm adding a little bit more of the light pockets on the bottom where the lightning would be flashing and bouncing around inside the clouds and reflecting and refracting through the water vapor. And so you want to make sure that you get um, all those little patches of light and your clouds. And so I'm just kind of working on that, and then going back with a little bit more of the dark right there. I wanted to refine that edge just a little bit more, that dark edge. And so I'm using some of the, you would use ultramarine blue, or you could use phthalo blue. Maybe throw in a little bit of burnt sienna with it, some white acrylic gesso. Phthalo blue will give you a darker, more greenish, kind of greenish, brown and brownish tones to the clouds there. And I'm just kind of working on the edge a little. I wanted a little bit more light on the edges. And then step back and look. If you're doing this traditionally, step back 6 feet at least and try to see how your painting looks. The average viewing distance, I think, is 6 to 8 feet on a painting. So just go ahead and step back and see what it looks like if you're doing this traditionally. And of course, if you're doing this digitally, just shrink it down, and that will give you the same kind of idea of what it will look like. So that's what I'm doing. And then I'm working a little bit more on the edges. I wanted a little bit more light contrast on the edges of the painting. And again, make sure that you smudge inside the cloud. You can leave the outer edges sort of a lot more defined, but make sure that you smudge the paint inside the clouds there, and blend it in. And so that looked better. That gave it a more defining look to do that. And I'm just trying to kind of get I wanted a little bit more color, a little bit more orange, a little bit darker. So I wanted to throw in another tone there of the orange, make it a little bit darker, just kind of throw that in the clouds, because again, things bounce around and reflect in funny ways when the lightning is in these clouds. And so you want to kind of show a little bit more color, and I decided to show a little bit more orange instead of quite such a pale peach color, because sometimes the clouds are really lit up and they're orangey looking when the lightning um, flashes in these big thunderheads. So it's important to just kind of put a few different tones of oranges and pinks and yellows and light blues as well. And then I shrink it down so that I can see what it looks like and try to kind of um, get an idea if I'm getting close to what I want. And I decided that that was pretty good, and then I would just go ahead and leave it and call it done. So this is the end of my Pillar of Fire series, and I'll have a new series coming pretty soon. So if you want to see that, hit the subscribe button. Thanks everybody for watching. Thank you so much for your support. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments down below, and I will catch you later.